Second row left, Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Defensive touchdowns are never a bad thing, but it also means you've got to go right back on the field. How do you quickly kind of transition on to the next series of plays when those types of things happen? 'Cause you've always had this mindset
Yeah, I mean,
get the ball back to the offense.
you can feel it. I mean, I know when I'm calling plays or communicating downstairs, you feel like that rush and then a dropout, and it's just like I always talk about. It's just habits, they have to remember that defense is right now proposition. You got to go out and stop them. It doesn't matter what happened the play before, but it is something that you have all your coaches kind of in their ear, trying to get them to re-energize, and I think it's just human nature that it's hard to do.
Right behind him, Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
And we saw Tyleek play a bigger role in this past week's game. Just what do you maybe see from him leading up to that game that enabled him to have his biggest game?
He's got really freakish athletic ability for his size. So with Tyleek, it's been just about developing consistency in practice, so that he earns those reps and those opportunities. He's been doing that more and more in practice, and I always knew he had the ability.
Second row right, Bill Landis, Rivals.
Jim, you've talked before about, I guess, your tolerance for how many big plays you want to give up in a game, and I can't recall when you gave up against Penn State.
Too many.
Well, what I'm wondering is when you have the takeaways you had and your defense scores, in your mind, do those things cancel each other out? Like if you have 7 big plays, does it get knocked down to 4 if you have 4 takeaways?
No. They still all count, and they still all need to be dealt with. We had a few too many against Penn State, and we've dealt with them. It's never okay, but I guess you can build the positive out of it when it happens, and you're doing a lot of good other things, and you win the game. You can take it and show why it happened and how we can fix it. But it doesn't even it out. That would be like, I always thought, well, if the defense scores a touchdown, really shouldn't it come off the offense's score? You know what I mean? So it would be like, if it was if we were up 14-0 and we got a touchdown, shouldn't it be 14 to -7? You know what I mean? Like the defense always gets you get the short end of that stick, but there is no balance, and that's defense. Once you start thinking like that, that's the wrong mentality in my book. You got to win every play.
Fourth row right, Cameron Teague Robinson, The Athletic.
Jim, Ronnie had a few nice plays in pass coverage and kind of in the middle with that secondary. We talk a lot about the corners, but just the safeties, the way they clog things up in the middle and close passing lanes pretty quickly, mixed with the linebackers. And how would you evaluate how they've done in that particular part of their game?
For first year, new system, I think they've done work, in terms of doing the things that you're talking about, defending the middle of the field, sitting on routes, having that confidence to, you have to like sit on a cliff there, and not back up because there's too much space. Once you do, you could get bodied out, good players will make plays on you if you back up. So I think they've really taken to it, and they hold their ground pretty well in the middle.
We talk about complementary football. How does in the middle, closing passing lanes help the defensive line? Because I imagine quarterback season, you have to hesitate, and it gets more.
Yep, it's all part of the disguise, all part of making the quarterback hold the ball for that extra second. It's coverage and rush working together. We talk about it all the time. The plays that you're talking about, we pull up, we show the example, we show the quarterback, clutching it for a second, and then our rush gets there. I think it's really the key to pass defense.
Right behind him, Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
Jim, just how unique is it to see a defensive end the size of JT break on a ball like a corner?
Very unique. You remember I'm a guy that's worked my way up, so being around someone like JT with those kind of skills, it's I've been around a guy or two in the past who has some of those unique athletic traits, but not at that size, and we saw it in practice. We actually saw him do it a couple times in practice. So I don't think any of us were surprised, but it's good to see him get those plays and then get the acknowledgement, that he deserves. It's not easy. He's a guy who's a big time prospect, and then a lot of pressure from all different areas that he should have this, he should have that, this many sacks, and he's been able to keep his head on straight, and his family's been great and supportive, and we've been supportive. So because we knew it was there, it's just a matter of time. So it's good to see him get that recognition.
To you trusting a defensive end to drop that into coverage, is there a certain level that you have to see from those guys to be able to trust them to do that in your coverage?
Yeah, you put it in as part of the system because it is something that I like to have, as a change-up because it changes the entire structure for a quarterback. Then I think what you're talking about is how much you call it is based on how well the guys do, how you match that with your personnel. And it was a nice thing to see. We actually called it a few times and made the quarterback hold the ball or got the interception.
Far right, Clay Hall, WSYX.
Is that the best performance by a DN you've ever seen? How would you describe what he did Saturday to others?
Yes, it is the best. It's not describable, I guess, in just dominating every phase of the game. Playing like a linebacker in terms of his ball skills, and then the rush and the strip and the eye-hand coordination. I mean, that is something that is different, and you just don't see it. And he's a guy who has it.
Front row right, Austin Ward, Rivals.
Jim, I'm sure there's an element of maybe easing or building the workload up for Jordan Hancock over the last couple of weeks. From what you've seen as he's got back maybe to closer to full health, what tells you he might be able to do more for you down the stretch?
Yeah, the film. I mean, and you're right. It is a process. I think I haven't been a baseball coach, but it is like a pitcher. That's why they call it a pitch count, I guess, because a guy can taper off as the game goes on if he hasn't built up that stamina. So, we're gradually increasing him and looking for more reps from him this week.
Right next door, Tim May, Letterman Row, on
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, I'm not trying to just didn't ask a question, make you a feel good question kind of thing. But I wanted to ask you this: when you have two players who end up on a guy and he makes the catch and he curls away from both of them, the call there looks pretty sound about not letting this guy get out of the gate, but he went anyway. And then of course Tommy, the guy runs through his tackle attempt in the backfield. I think it was on that 4th and goal play. So he was in position. So where do you go from there to to make sure they make the play the next time?
You break. Yeah, you break that. You do break it down in detail. In terms of vicing the ball, it's when we had the two guys there, and I call it owning your hip. Like it's okay, if you're outside and you miss, make sure he goes inside. If you're inside and you miss, make sure he goes outside. And that is not something you just like. You don't come back that week and say, we need to start working on vice tackle because we actually call that a drill, vice tackle. It is a defensive fundamental. Now and we've had plenty of good ones, but when it goes wrong, you can say, okay, guys, here's vice tackle. This is why we do that drill. And then with Tommy, yeah, those plays, right. I mean, there's a roll tackle, like a single leg takedown, and those are more difficult to do in when they happen quick like that, like right on the snap. You saw him do it plenty of times on the perimeter, like when you have more time to run, where you can go in there and roll the time. But when it happens that fast, that's what he needed to do, and he knows that. because if you're up too high, you could slide off. You know, you got to be able to go low and roll, but it's just difficult to get in that position. So those are drills that we do all the time, and we show the good examples along with the ones that didn't go quite as well, so that the guys are more motivated to keep doing the drill.
But you know why I asked that, because those were 2 of the 4 touchdowns, you know, yeah, and you have them dead to rights, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean that just means we shouldn't stop practicing. Right.
Right next door, Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Jim, the first interception that JT has, where he's able to drop in coverage and jump the route, is to have that athleticism. How much does that enhance what you can do as a play caller to give you more options in a toolbox when you have a player who has sort of that multifaceted?
Yeah, it does, and it allows you to disguise better too. Because here's a guy who could rush and be a threat, and everybody knows how good of a rusher he is. And now he's a guy who can drop into coverage and actually make plays. I mean, I think people drop D linemen a lot, but you know, they don't make a lot of plays. You do it maybe just to cloud up a window or give the quarterback a different look, but you know, we've got guys who can actually make plays, and he showed that.
Right next door, Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
You've been effusive in your praise of Lathan. He's clearly now probably the guy. You talked about how he just kind of is so instinctive. What about his personality in terms of just, you know, coming back from the injury and just playing as recklessly as he does, given, you know, that he had that kind of injury?
Yeah, I think he is one of those guys that, at least I've never seen, never shows fear, never shows frustration or fatigue. You know, he's just one of those guys. And I'm sure, you know, when he was a kid, he was one of those kids who just kind of threw his body around, you know. His parents could I mean, some guys just have that ability to, you know, run through a wall and not be fazed by it. And he's one of those guys.
Far left, Nathan Baird, Cleveland.com.
I guess this might be a little bit similar to what Joey just asked you, but like, you've been talking so much about you implementing your system. Does your system account for game records like what JT just did, what Zach was doing the week before? Is that sort of in a separate folder that you've been waiting to use? Like how, because you're talking about like this is maybe your first experience with players to that level. So how do you now fold that into what you've already been implementing?
Yeah, to me, it's part of the system that gets accentuated and planned for more is when you have those kind of players who can do it one-on-one. You know what I mean? So I think it allows you to do other things in the back end when you're not, you know, trying to create something yourself with a call as much as you're, you know, you do other things, double somewhere, play a different coverage, do other things when you know that there's guys who can just win one-on-one. You know, it gives you more versatility.
Second row left. We got time for just a couple more, folks. Steve Hellwagen, 24/7 Sports.
Yeah, Coach, I want to ask you about competitive stamina, something Coach Day preaches quite a bit. About 9 minutes to go in the game, you guys are ahead by 2, and they've got the ball with the chance to go down and regain the lead. But JT makes that play. He made another play, the interception later on. Just the way you guys were able to play the full 4 quarters, you gave up some big plays along the way, but they had the stamina to stay with it and finish the game. Penn State blinked, and you guys won the game.
Yeah, I mean, goes back to, you said it, what Coach has instilled here and Mick and his staff in the weight room. You know, I think we benefit from that as assistant coaches because you're handed these guys who are trained to precision and trained with that mindset. So now it is our job. We did give up some explosive plays, you know, and like I've talked to them about that. And what you do is you review those, and I take responsibility, you know, and then the guys get to see that. So what happens is they're built with this competitive stamina, and when things go wrong, as long as we as coaches don't lose our mind, you know, because I've been around that before, where, you know, coaches blow a gasket when things go wrong. Well, you know, that's leadership. I mean, our job as coaches as leaders is to be steady, and they see that, and the players see that, and they model that because they've already been trained that way, and I think you get the result that we all hope for.
Fourth row middle, Tony Girdman, Buckeye Huddle.
Jim, what is what's going on in the headset and up in the press box or in the coach's box when you're seeing JT do all of these things at all of these crazy moments? What's your reaction? What's the reaction of everything going on in the headset?
It's really pretty quiet because everybody puts their when you put your microphone up. So because when you're a play caller, you really need that quiet. So you don't hear the field, so it's really pretty quiet. I'm sure they're all down there celebrating and going crazy, and that's what they should do. I enjoy it for about 3 seconds, and then I have to start thinking about, okay, we got to get back on the field and what, the chess match and what the next play is going to be. So the players and the coaches on the field get to enjoy it, but upstairs it's on to the next play.
And final questions, deep right, Jeremy, Birmingham Rivals.
Jim, speaking of the competitive salmon and all that, does that make the final drive of the day that much more irritating and frustrating for you when the game is for all intents and purposes over, but then the defense sort of exhaled and they score pretty quickly and easily?
Yeah, a lot of times as coaches, you are, it's a fight between you and human nature. You know what I mean? That happens, and that is my job is to train them to perform on every series, no matter what the circumstance. So, yeah, it's frustrating. It's also a teaching moment. I don't ever like doing that, no matter what the score is, no matter who's in the game. But like I said, that just shows me, let's not cancel practice. Let's keep practicing.
Coach, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.